about water ethics. We spoke at length about all sorts of ethics, including a lot on medical ethics. I'm going to take you to a slightly different trajectory, looking at water and how the ethical principles are applied in the use of water. And also, so the subject area which I'm looking at is actually an area called Lower Mekong River Basin. The Lower Mekong River Basin consists of 3 countries, which is Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Okay. The next slide. Now, the outline of my presentation, I will talk to you a few slides on what is water ethics. Then the second, I will state the problem of the issue which I'm going to discuss today, essentially on the issue of water, and the ethical principles in question and conclusion. Now, what is water, ladies and gentlemen? Essentially, water is a basic common good, the idea of a common good, right, for all living beings, and without it, the whole ecosystem will not exist. Now, the nature of water, according to Molinga, is inherently fluid, transient, and political. All right? Water, as we know, is fluid, transient, and furthermore, it's also, in addition to that, it's also very political, especially when countries or regions share the same riverine or the same source of water. All right. What is the water dilemma we have? Access to water. At the moment, we have more than 850 million people who have insufficient access to drinking water. And Asia is one of the worst case scenario where the level of scarcity of water is the highest, although we get probably the highest rainfall compared to the other continents. There are also health concerns. All right, 2 million people die each year due to illnesses caused by improper use of water. Around 4,000 children under the age of 5 die every day due to a lack of drinking water and proper sanitation. Now, the other water dilemma also includes food security, because in many countries in the world, including in the least developed and least developed countries, which includes countries like Laos and Cambodia, food is a major issue. So food has been securitized in those countries. So therefore, these are rice-growing countries. So any impact on water has also a trickling impact on the production of food. Then, of course, we have sanitation. In most countries, when you do not have proper sanitation, water access, you have open defecation, and this causes a lot of hygiene problems. Alright, when you talk about water, there's always a question of dependencies, because water is transboundary. The subject matter I'm looking at today is actually the river or the riverines, right? So when you talk about water, usually there's water that is a component of sovereignty. Who owns the water? Alright? So states always think that they have the right for ownership, right, of water. Then you have other components I can't see from here. Okay, the idea of development, right? And there are so many other, the right to build, to generate electricity out of rivers, right? So all this water is there are interdependency with a multiple level of stakeholders, right? So I remember in India, there is also water issue between states. I've seen a big river in South India going dry. I was wondering, I parked the car, I asked my taxi driver to stop there and say, what happened to the river? And much of the floodplains are now being used to build houses. So we have all these problems with water. We also have water conflicts, all right? It's either between the regions of the same country or between countries. Now, having said that, then what is water ethics? Water ethics, essentially, it's about water governance, proper water governance, moral reasoning, thinking about how water should be managed and used. Now, ethics and values are important dimensions of the governance of water. Water ethics put forward the principle of fairness, equity, solidarity, and social justice. I'll be looking at this shortly. Now, these are the other elements that that constitute good governance, IWRM, what ethics, which is human dignity, participation of the society, solidarity between stakeholders, equality and equity of humans, that everybody has the right for the same amount of water, the same access of water, water as common good, stewardship in managing water resources, transparency and universal good conduct, inclusiveness and empowerment. Now, these are the area of coverage, which is extremely important. When we talk about water ethics, there must be accountability with regard to how we manage water. There must be participation, right? People-centered participation. And this happens, we find that when the democratic institutions are not strong in certain countries, then you don't have enough civil society participation, right? Okay, that's one of the things. And of course, you have transparency in decision making and policy formulation, and inclusion of all levels of society. Let me go fast a bit. Now, what is the Mekong River? Have you ever traveled to the Mekong River? I'm sure, yes. Alright, I've gone from here up to somewhere here, Laos. I've traveled, I spent nearly about 2 years in 2016 and 17 on a funded research project looking at water security issues in this region. Okay, so basically the problem that we have is human activities, industrialization, developments are rapidly changing the environment, socio-economic, cultural, political landscape, and that has an impact on the basin itself, the ecological and sustainability of the basin itself, alright, through unsustainable means. Okay. Let's move on. Now this is some of the activities, this is in Laos, this is in Siem Reap, this again in Laos, this one in, I don't know where, but this is a minister, I think Minister of Mines in Laos, this is in Cambodia, alright, okay. This is in Vietnam, this is my visit to the Mekong. Okay. Now, as we know that why Mekong is important, because of it is a biodiversity hotspot. It's the richest river basin in the world for fish biodiversity, alright? It holds more than 1,000 fish species, in fact more than the Amazon, okay? And it also hosts the world's largest inland fishery that accounts for about 25% of the global freshwater catch. In terms of biodiversity, we also have more than 20,000 plant species, more than 1,200 species of birds, and so on and so forth. So it is a what do you call that, a hotspot for biodiversity. Now, what is the issue? Primarily is climate change. Because of climate change, there are modification of weather patterns, right? In terms of the rise of temperature, irregular rainfalls, wind, and all these are resulting in frequency of extreme events, either drought or rainfall, in that sense. Seasonal water shortages, drought, flood, all become more common and more severe, and also causing what we call saltwater intrusion. What happens is that during the drought season, there is less water that flows in the Mekong, so there is a salinity, or rather saltwater intrusion into the delta area, alright, and that causes havoc in the lower delta. And this has to do with China as well. I'll get back to this, alright? Alright, so therefore there is a climate change impact, alright, with regard to this, with regard to the use of water. Alright, so right now we have more extreme events, we have typhoons, the basin is more vulnerable to flood and drought affecting people, because there are about 65 million people living in this river basin. Okay? Saltwater intrusion caused by sea level rise, drought are taking a toll on agriculture. Yesterday I was asking one of the professors who did some work in Vietnam about in Vietnam they use the saltwater resistant rice. That means they have come up with a new strain of rice that could resist or could also grow on water which is a bit more saltier. Alright, there are also issues of degradation of the ecosystem, and climate change, alright, will decrease the productivity, capacity of livelihood, whatnot. Okay. Now, Another issue in my research is actually dam building and power shoring problems. Now if you see that this is the river, alright, the river starts in China, in the Tibetan plateau in China, and goes through, forms the natural border in Myanmar, Burma, Myanmar. Then it goes here, which is actually the natural border of Thailand. So Laos is here, Thailand is here. It goes to Cambodia, then it empties itself in Vietnam, which is somewhere here. Okay. Now, one of the problems of water resource management is excessive dam building, which is actually done by China in the mainstream here. So much of the river water has been diverted for agriculture purposes here. So what happens is during the drought, 2 minutes, I'll try to finish it. So there is China controls. So China becomes what we call the hydro hegemon, a person who actually can control politics. So water is politicized in this area. Okay? Water is a political issue in this area. Okay. Now, damming the Mekong, sorry the word, but I think the dam is actually produce a lot of problems. So like for example, you have to block sedimentation. Alright? Block sedimentation when you have too many dams along the mainstream, and so as well as the tributaries. Alright? So relocation of people impact millions. There are also other issues as well, issues on fishery and livelihood. Some of the migratory fish are unable to migrate because of the dam. So what they have done is they have come up with a good idea of, we call it a fish ladder. They ask the fish to go to swim on a ladder to go upstream, which some of the fish probably have not learned. So it's difficult for the fish to climb the ladder. Okay. So these are some of the things about fish population, alright, the water resource. The finding, let me go to the last slide. What are the ethical issues, alright? Basically when you talk about that is the idea of respect of autonomy and democracy. We see a lack of public participation when it comes to the lower Mekong River with regard to water resource management. Issues of accountability of public institutions, social and gender issue has not been addressed, and so on. And the idea of justice, water rights, I already mentioned here. Non-militarism, alright? This is the national interest versus ecological and human security interest. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Yes. Yes, I like your paper, not Ravi. My question concerns the nature of the Mekong River, which is an international river, China, Laos, Burma, and so on. And you are talking about how these issues are going to be managed. But problem is we have several countries, surrounding the river. How do you get these countries to you talk about governance and justice, right? How can you achieve such issue in the international setting?
Frankly speaking, in the course of the last 2 years, I visited about almost 30 water-related agencies in these 3 countries. And when we talk about issues of governance, very rarely people talk about ethics. They talk about sharing of resources. They talk about development, sharing of resources. So the idea of water ethics is not a major issue, right? But of course, the idea of sustainability, environmental protection has been there because many NGOs are playing a very important role in the region, especially NGOs like Rivers International, which are promoting the idea of good governance. As you know, this is a transboundary river. So they have a regional organization called the Mekong River Commission, which does not have, punitive or rather the powers to enact laws. It is a kind of a body where water scientists come together. And for a long time it was managed by Western people, so-called specialists, but now it's by a Vietnamese person. So it is more of data sharing and trying to come up with some similarity on how, or some commonality on how to manage the river. They're doing a good job nevertheless in terms of data sharing, but they do not have what we call the mandate to bring about policy change with regard. The other issue is actually, now you have a MRC here, then China came out. China is not a member of MRC. although Mekong. So they came up with another organization called the Lanchang Mekong Initiative. And they give more initiatives, so countries like Thailand and a few other countries are now joining them. So you have two agencies or two regional organizations, one with China, one without China, managing the river. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, Ravi, for your nice presentation. Actually, I have the question related to this transboundary river access.
Bangladesh is the same problem.
Yes, I am from Bangladesh. So I like to talk about the Farakka. Have you any mind to raise your voice to use the water of Farakka in between two countries? Because we have very troublesome conditions. If you open the Farakka Dam, when we are submerged with many casualties.
You're talking about Bangladesh, right?
About raise your voice,
You're talking
please.
about Bangladesh. You see, the unique thing, there are water dissatisfaction between states, but nobody has gone to war over water yet. Okay? Nobody has gone to war. In the case of China, in the case of Bangladesh, from my reading, China has been a very supportive partner, but there are some issues as well. In the case of Mekong, it's more different because Vietnam has problem with China. So, Vietnam's voice has not really been heard by the Chinese. You see, what happens when you are up there, you control the tap. Alright? You control the tap. Alright? If you want to divert, that goes. There was many cases in Vietnam where the salinity level was very high. So, it takes 14 days for the river for water from the upper approaches of the Mekong to reach the delta. So when they turn on the tap, it takes 14 days to reach. Very interesting how water works. But I specifically am not familiar with the issues of Bangladesh, but I know that you are sharing the same river basin. That's always an issue.
Ravi,
Yeah.
in Japan, we are using drinkable water
Okay.
to the bathtub and even toilet flush.
Correct.
So I would like to export huge amount of water to your country. Let's be
My country is water rich, no issue.
being Asian
Okay.
to get the big money.
That was a comment. It was not not a question.
Would you like to comment on the question of the lack of potable water right across Asia? Bangladesh, India and so on are water rich, they should be. But there's very little, there's a limited amount of drinkable water and there's huge amounts of waste that are produced as a result of it.
I think one of the issues of water management in this part of the world, or rather in mainland Southeast Asia and also in South Asia, is water efficiency. How you manage. In many countries, like even in Vietnam or other Cambodia and all that, groundwater is in abundance. Right? Groundwater. One river, water that flows in the river, the other one in the ground, and which can be tapped and harnessed as well. But the issue again is about how efficiently you use water. There will be wastage. Okay? Most countries have imbibed or rather inculcated the IWRM method, which is the integrated water management method. Alright? Many countries have done that. But it is not so widespread in many countries in South Asia and also in mainland Southeast Asia. So I think this is one of the issues, right? You have water, but the thing is, because the water level or the use of water or efficiency level is low, then you may have water scarcity. Right? There are three levels. I'm promising they call it water scarcity, water stress, and another one I will forget. The different level of water. Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll finish there. Thank you, Ravi, for a stimulating talk. And I'd like to thank, on your behalf, all the presenters in this wonderful section.